She was the original it girl of Hollywood, the woman whose name became synonymous with sex appeal and stardom in the 1920s. Clara Bow wasn't just a movie star, she was a cultural phenomenon. The living embodiment of the jazz age. With her fiery red hair, mischievous eyes, and magnetic screen presence, audiences adored her, men fantasized about her, and women copied her every style. Yet behind the dazzling image was a young woman scarred by secrets so dark that Hollywood worked tirelessly to hide them. Clara Bow's childhood was a nightmare, raised in poverty, threatened by a mentally unstable mother, and abused by her own father. Her rise to fame seemed like an impossible miracle, but with fame came an avalanche of scandals. She was smeared by vicious rumors of wild orgies, salacious affairs, and lurid Hollywood gossip columns that nearly destroyed her career. In the end, the very industry that made her a legend would abandon her, leaving her isolated and broken. Her story is more than just one of stardom, it's a tale of betrayal, exploitation, and secrets that even her own family would later expose to the world. How did the woman who defined Hollywood's golden age end up silenced and forgotten? And what shocking truths about Clara Bow's life were deliberately buried beneath the glamour of Hollywood's golden spotlight? Clara Gordon Bow was born on July 29, 1905, in a poverty-stricken neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. From the very beginning, her life was steeped in hardship, loss, and instability. She was the third child of Robert Bow and Sarah Gordon, but both of her older sisters had died in infancy. That left Clara as the only surviving child, a fragile reminder of life amid death. Her father, Robert, was a drifter who struggled to hold steady work. He was described as charming but irresponsible, a man who often abandoned his family for weeks at a time. Clara would later hint at a darker truth, that he had sexually abused her during her youth, an unspoken wound she carried for the rest of her life. Her mother, Sarah, was even more unstable, suffering from severe mental illness, often believed to be psychosis or epilepsy. Sarah swung between moments of tenderness and terrifying violence. She told Clara that she should never have been born, that she too should have died like her sisters. In one chilling incident, Sarah even tried to slit Clara's throat with a butcher knife as she slept, forcing young Clara to live in constant fear inside her own home. Amidst this chaos, Clara had only one escape: the movies. Nickelodeon's became her sanctuary, places where she could disappear into the glow of the silver screen. Sitting in the dark, watching glamorous stars live out lives so far removed from her own, Clara dreamed of something better, a chance to leave Brooklyn, to reinvent herself, and to be loved by the whole world. This haunting childhood, scarred by abuse, poverty, and a desperate longing for escape, shaped everything Clara Bow would become. It gave her the raw, emotional intensity that audiences later felt in every glance, every movement on screen, but it also left her vulnerable to the relentless pressures of fame, and to the cruel exploitation that Hollywood would soon inflict on her. Clara Bow's education was fragmented. Much like her chaotic childhood, school never provided her with a true escape. She was often bullied by other children for her ragged clothes and fiery temper. But Clara's sharp wit, tomboyish energy, and street smarts made her stand out. She may not have excelled in academics, but she had an instinctive understanding of people, a quality that would later light up the movie screen. Her first big break came in 1921 when she entered the motion picture magazine's Fame and Fortune contest. Against hundreds of other girls, Clara's raw, unpolished charm won the judges over. She received her first role in a short silent film called Beyond the Rainbow, 1922. Although most of her scenes were cut, Clara had gotten her foot in Hollywood's door. In the following years, she began appearing in small roles in low-budget silent films. Unlike many actresses who carefully crafted their personas, Clara was unfiltered. Her natural energy, the way she moved, and her expressive eyes captivated audiences. By 1923, She landed roles in more significant projects like Down to the Sea and Ships, a film that first showcased her talent to wider audiences. Hollywood quickly realized she had something special. She wasn't polished like the aristocratic stars of the day, she was raw. Electric, modern, she embodied the new spirit of the 1920s, the jazz age, youthful, rebellious, and bursting with life. By the mid-1920s, she was cast in a string of films that highlighted her vitality and sex appeal, setting the stage for her transformation into a cultural icon. But the industry she was entering was unforgiving. Clara was young, naive, and often without proper guidance. While audiences adored her, Hollywood insiders whispered about her background, mocking her Brooklyn accent and rough manners. Already, the press began to spin stories about her wild, off-screen behavior, planting the seeds of scandal that would haunt her throughout her career. Clara Bow was on the brink of stardom, but also stepping into a world that would exploit her every weakness. By the mid-1920s, Clara Bow had risen from obscurity to become one of the brightest stars of the silent film era. Unlike the regal, aristocratic beauties of early Hollywood, Clara was something entirely new. She embodied the energy of the jazz age. With her tousled red hair, playful grin, and uninhibited charm, she wasn't just acting on screen, she was living, breathing, and radiating a spirit audiences instantly connected with. Her big breakthrough came in 1927 with the film It. Based on Eleanor Glynn's novella, the film introduced the concept of it, a magnetic, irresistible sex appeal that couldn't be taught or explained. Clara Bow embodied it so completely that she became forever known as the It Girl. Overnight, she was the most talked about actress in Hollywood. From that moment, Clara became a box office phenomenon. Films like Wings, 1927, the first movie ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture, cemented her place in history. Audiences adored her vitality, her flapper style, and the way she represented the modern American woman, independent, fun-loving, and unashamed of her sexuality. At her peak, Clara was appearing in multiple films a year, often working to exhaustion. She was Paramount's biggest star and one of the highest-paid actresses in the world. Fan clubs exploded across the country. Women copied her bobbed haircut and fashion, and men were captivated by her sultry yet playful persona. Clara Bow wasn't just an actress, she was a cultural movement. But success came with a price. Clara's free-spirited nature, which made her so beloved on screen, also made her a target in real life. The press labeled her Hollywood's wild child. Gossip columnists dug into her private life, and rumors of scandal followed her everywhere. While she had conquered Hollywood, the vultures of fame were already circling, waiting for the perfect moment to tear her down. Clara Bow had reached the very top, but as history would show, the higher she climbed, the further she would fall. If Clara Bow's screen presence made her Hollywood's darling, her off-screen life made her the favorite target of scandal sheets and gossip columnists. Unlike other stars who carefully crafted polished images, Clara was authentic, unguarded, emotional, and full of life. That very honesty was used against her. Her romantic life became headline fodder. Clara was linked to numerous men in Hollywood, actors, producers, and even athletes. She dated cowboy star Rex Bell, actor Gary Cooper, and was rumored to have had brief encounters with many others. Some relationships were real, some exaggerated, and others completely fabricated by the press. But for Clara, it didn't matter. Each rumor chipped away at her reputation. The most devastating blow came in 1931, when a former secretary of Clara's sold scandalous stories to a tabloid called the Coast Reporter. These exposés accused Clara of wild orgies, affairs with women, gambling binges, and even bestiality, lurid tales with little to no evidence. Though the stories were largely dismissed by serious journalists, the damage to her image was catastrophic. Clara sued the magazine and won. But in the court of public opinion, the stain lingered. Hollywood, ever eager to protect its stars, could not shield Clara from her own candor. She was open about her background, her Brooklyn accent, and her rough edges, all things the industry tried to hide. Where others played the part of glamorous screen goddesses, Clara remained unpolished and real. But in a time when Hollywood demanded perfection, her authenticity was seen as weakness. Her bad girl reputation made it difficult for her to find the same respect afforded to contemporaries like Greta Garbo or Norma Shearer. While fans adored her, studio executives grew wary, and gossip columns relished in portraying Clara as out of control. Behind the glamorous image of the it girl was a woman increasingly cornered by the weight of rumor, betrayal, and a cruel spotlight. Clara's love life and alleged scandals weren't just Hollywood gossip. They were weapons used to undermine her, tarnish her star power, and push her toward a devastating collapse. By the early 1930s, Clara Bow was still a box office sensation, but the weight of constant scandals and betrayals began to take a devastating toll. Hollywood had built her up as the ultimate it girl, yet it seemed equally eager to tear her down. The smear campaign from the Coast Reporter lingered in the public imagination, no matter how untrue or exaggerated. For Clara, it was not just humiliation, it was character assassination. Even after she won her lawsuit, the vicious rumors continued to resurface, whispered in gossip circles and whispered about in Hollywood's elite parties. The worst tragedy, however, was how deeply personal the betrayal felt. Clara had never fit into the polished world of Hollywood royalty. She was too raw, too honest, too real. Studio executives mocked her Brooklyn accent and lack of refinement. Fellow actresses looked down on her working-class roots, and the very press that once hailed her as America's sweetheart now treated her as scandalous tabloid fodder. Privately, Clara was beginning to unravel. Years of relentless work schedules, exploitation, and public humiliation left her physically and emotionally exhausted. She suffered from insomnia, anxiety, and breakdowns that often left her unable to function. Doctors began prescribing sedatives, pills that only worsened her fragile mental state. Adding to the tragedy was her relationship with her family. Clara's mother had died in 1923, but her father remained in her life, and he exploited her at every opportunity. Reports suggest Robert Bow not only drained Clara financially, but his abusive behavior continued to haunt her well into adulthood. She had escaped Brooklyn, but she could never truly escape the shadows of her childhood. By the mid-1930s, Clara's once unshakable spirit was crumbling. The it girl who had electrified audiences was now at war with Hollywood itself, and with her own inner demons. Her story was shifting from triumph to tragedy, setting the stage for a heartbreaking downfall that no one could have predicted for the brightest star of the jazz age. By 1933, the pressure had become unbearable. Clara Bow, once the most luminous star in Hollywood, walked away from the spotlight. At just 28 years old, the it girl of the jazz age retired from films, citing exhaustion and emotional collapse. For the public, it seemed unthinkable that the woman who had defined an era could disappear so suddenly, but for Clara, it was survival. She found some solace in her marriage to cowboy actor Rex Bell. Together, they bought a ranch in Nevada, far from the relentless glare of Hollywood. There, Clara tried to build a new life as a devoted wife and mother, raising two sons, Tony and Rex Jr., but even away from the cameras, her inner battles raged on. Clara struggled with severe mental health issues, what doctors at the time diagnosed as schizophrenia. She suffered from paranoia, anxiety, and breakdowns that often left her hospitalized. In truth, she was likely dealing with the compounded trauma of her abusive childhood, relentless gossip campaigns, and years of exploitation by the film industry. Medication helped little, and the vibrant, playful star the world had once adored became a recluse. Her relationship with her children was also complicated. Years later, her son Rex Jr. wrote a memoir in which he revealed painful details of Clara's breakdowns and erratic behavior, accounts that shocked fans who still remembered her as the joyful it girl. For many, it felt like yet another betrayal, this time from within her own family. By the 1950s, Clara lived in almost complete isolation. She rarely left her home, avoiding visitors and the outside world. The woman who had once symbolized the roaring spirit of the 1920s now spent her final years in silence and solitude. On September 27, 1965, Clara Bow died of a heart attack at the age of 60. The news saddened Hollywood, but it was also a reminder of how completely she had been forgotten. The industry that had once celebrated her abandoned her long before her death, leaving her legacy clouded by scandal, tragedy, and unanswered questions. Clara Bow's story was no longer just about stardom. It had become a haunting parable about how Hollywood could devour its brightest stars and discard them when they were no longer useful. Today, Clara Bow is remembered not only as Hollywood's original it girl but also as one of its most tragic figures. Her image, flapper dresses, Cupid's bow lips, and that playful, mischievous gaze, remains a symbol of the Roaring Twenties. Without her, the archetype of the modern screen siren might never have existed. Marilyn Monroe, Madonna, even today's pop culture icons all owe something to the trail she blazed. Yet, her legacy is bittersweet. For decades, her name was overshadowed by scandal, rumors, and the cruel gossip that once hounded her into retirement. Only in recent years has a new appreciation for her artistry emerged. Film historians now recognize Clara Bow as more than just a symbol of sex appeal. She was a gifted actress with extraordinary comedic timing and emotional depth, capable of stealing every scene she appeared in. But her story also remains a cautionary tale. Clara Bow was chewed up and spit out by an industry that profited from her charisma while exploiting her vulnerabilities. She was the prototype of the modern celebrity, adored, scrutinized, celebrated, and destroyed by fame all at once. And perhaps the most haunting question still lingers. How much of Clara's downfall was the result of her own demons, and how much was orchestrated by a Hollywood machine determined to control, exploit, and discard its stars once they no longer conformed? In the end, Clara Bow remains both a legend and a mystery. The it girl who defined an era still shines brightly on the silver screen, even as the shadows of her life remind us that behind every glamorous Hollywood story lies a truth far darker than the cameras ever revealed.